This happened last summer. I'm a 32-year-old male, and I live alone in an apartment outside of the city. At the time, I'd just moved in and had thrown away a lot of old stuff that I had from my other place, so I was occasionally scrolling through Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, looking for a few furnishings. The two things I needed the most were a coffee table and a TV stand, but I wasn't in too much of a rush, so I didn't mind searching for a couple weeks if I had to. I remember it being a Monday night, and I had just gotten home from work. I was scrolling through some posts on Craigslist at the dinner table and came by a coffee table that I liked. Cheap, not too old, and in good condition. I sent an email and continued scrolling, but not even 20 seconds later, I got an email reply back. The man, Cole, said he could sell it to me, but it had to be tonight because he was moving out and planned to throw it away in the morning. Having nothing else to do that night, I responded, "Sure, just let me know where to pick it up from." He sent over an address, and I did a quick Google search of it. The house was 25 minutes away in a neighborhood I'd never been to before. I told him to give me an hour and I'd be there. Although I was tired and it was pretty late, I didn't mind doing a quick pickup. I was also just happy to finally get a coffee table for my living room. I finished eating my meal at the table, then got in my car and started driving there. There was a light drizzle outside, so I was hoping the table wasn't too heavy and we could quickly get it in my car without getting water damage. The drive there felt long, going down some windy roads until ending up in a small, poorly lit neighborhood. By poorly lit, I mean that there were very few street lights, all being dim, and most of the houses had their lights off. It was late, so I didn't expect everyone to be up at this time, but still, it was a bit creepy. When I found the house, it was a small one-story place, one of the few houses that had its lights on. As I turned into the driveway, I saw a man standing in the corner of the garage, seemingly searching for something. When I put the car in park, the man looked over at me, then quickly ran inside. I waited for a minute, thinking he was gonna come back out, but he didn't. I exited my car and walked into the garage, knocking on the door. Then I knocked again, but nobody was answering. I wasn't sure if I should go to the front door or what, but it was giving me a weird feeling, and I was starting to think of just leaving, when the door suddenly opened. It was a different man than I'd seen in the garage, but he introduced himself as Cole. He invited me in to check out the coffee table. I followed him into the living room. The table looked as it did in the pictures, and wasn't broken or anything, so I was good to buy it. Cole was making small talk with me, telling me about his new place he just bought, but every time I tried to interrupt and say I'd like to buy the table, he would keep talking. It started to get uncomfortable, standing there listening to him talk over me for 5 whole minutes. It felt like more of a distraction, like he was keeping me there. I finally just cut him off and said I was in a hurry and needed to get home soon. He stopped talking and said I could have it for free. I suspiciously said okay, then asked if he could help me haul it into my car, and we both grabbed it and started walking it through the house. It wasn't super heavy, but it definitely was a 2-person lift. We got it into the garage and set it down for a rest, but right away, I heard someone running up behind me. They came from the side of the house, running up to me wearing a mask and hoodie. I froze up, both scared and confused. The man wasn't very aggressive, and Cole just stood there with a blank face. The man asked for my wallet and phone, holding up a knife at me. I put my hands up, but I really didn't feel threatened enough to comply. He asked again, louder this time, but I took my chances and sprinted for my car. The man lunged at me, but I kept running, getting in and locking the door before they could do anything. I backed out and drove away, and that's when I noticed a cut on my arm that went through my shirt. The man must have slashed me, but in the moment I didn't even notice. I pulled over a few roads down and called the police, providing them with an address and description of the two men. To sum it all up, the cops questioned Cole, which was actually his name, and after a brief interrogation, he admitted the masked man was his buddy and they were just trying to rob me with no intention of selling anything. They were both young and it was their first time trying something like this, so I guess they were nervous and that's why it felt so strange. Lucky for me, the cut on my arm wasn't deep at all, not even needing stitches. When it came down to it, they were given a few charges, but nothing too serious. I'm glad I chose to run though, because I worry that if I had let them take advantage and rob me, then they would have had the confidence to continue doing it. After this though, I don't think they'll be trying that again.
So, way back when the PS3 first came out, I really wanted one. I mean, I wanted one bad. The main reason was because I wanted to play Call of Duty 3, which is still my favorite game series ever. But since my idiot self was slow on pre-ordering one, I was SOL when it came to the actual release date. I remember watching eBay like a hawk, scouring Craigslist every day, and day after day went by and I didn't have any luck at all. But then boom, I see this one post on Craigslist that said a guy was selling his brand new PlayStation 3, Call of Duty 3 included, and he's selling both of them for like $400, at least $100 below asking price. Only thing was, he needed to sell it ASAP, and he needed someone to drive over to him to pick it up. Person that could pay his asking price and pick up ASAP got the package. Somehow, I got lucky, real lucky, and a lot of folks were messaging him for it and sounded like they were going to rob him. I was older than most of the wannabe buyers. I could text him a picture of the cash and I could drive over to the Walmart parking lot that night to be able to pick it up. And I felt like a kid at Christmas. Granted that most kids don't drive to Santa to pay him $400 to get their presents, but still, I was majorly excited to pick it up. Only trouble was, the guy was working late that night, so I'd have to drive over to the Walmart parking lot at like 2 in the morning so I could pick it up. I know what you're thinking. Walmart parking lot at 2 a.m. Something bad was always going to happen. And yeah, I'd be lying if I said it hadn't passed my mind when I was thinking about the whole thing. I think I made myself clear at the beginning though. I wanted that stupid World War II game, and the amount I wanted it outweighed whatever good sense I had. So, that's how I ended up in the Walmart parking lot in South Hanover, way after dark. Like I said, there was always a chance something bad was going to happen. I just figured it'd be from the other end of the law. I'm just sitting there, lacking, when I heard someone tapping on the glass in my driver's side window, and I saw the gun. I thought I was getting carjacked or something. They got me out of the car at gunpoint, but then when I saw the badge on the dude in plainclothes belt, I honestly breathed a sigh of relief at first. I knew my reason for being there sounded sketchy. Picking up a PlayStation 3 at 2 in the morning would have sounded really sus if I was a cop. But then when they pulled the $400 in cash out of my wallet and said that they were confiscating it as suspected earnings for drugs, I started to get real angry. I told them to search my car for drugs or guns or whatever they were looking for. If they didn't find anything, they had no right to take my money. One of the cops smirks when I said that though, screaming up in my face and threatening to smack me. His partner had to calm him down like he was legitimately worried that he was about to punch me. The angry cop walks back to their unmarked car and the other cop writes up a ticket for the cash they took. And while he does that, he apologizes for his partner and promises if I bring some pay stubs to the precinct, I'll get all my money back, no problems. I'm angry. I'm probably going to miss out on the PlayStation, but I figured the guys are just doing their jobs, and getting it taken by them was much better than getting straight up robbed and carjacked by dudes that wouldn't have been so reluctant to beat me down. Because I figured I could still get my hands on the PlayStation, I drove over to the precinct first thing in the morning with some pay stubs, which I figured would prove the money was mine. I get there, hand in my ticket, and some cop walks out with an evidence bag with my money in it. Only right as she puts it down in front of me, I tell her there must be some kind of mistake. I tell her the cops pulled me out of my car and took exactly $400 off of me, but in the bag, there was no more than $100. She then shows me the ticket, and in the little box that listed confiscated items, it says 100 instead of 400. Right then, it was my turn to freak out. Like I couldn't believe that they do me like that. I started demanding complaint forms, numbers to call, all of that. The lady just thought that I was sizing up the amount, but I swear to God I had more money than that. So she gives me the number to call to register a complaint, which I do. I know. Cops taking bribes around Baltimore is probably only raising eyebrows with the most naive of you, but missing out on the PS3 wasn't the scary thing. The scary thing was coming home from work 3 days later and seeing a car I didn't recognize parked across the street. I didn't immediately assume anything bad. I just wondered who in the neighborhood got themselves a new set of wheels. That's when I see him, the same plainclothes cop that wanted to tee off on me that night. The same cop who took my money. He just looks at me, dead in the eyes, and smiles before driving off down the block. It was just like a warning or something, just to tell me he knew I made the complaint. If criminals or gangsters do stuff, it shakes you up, sure, but it makes sense. Those Johns are supposed to rob you or shoot you or whatever. But when it's the cops doing it, the same people who's supposed to protect you, who are you supposed to turn to?
I tried buying a truck off of Craigslist some years ago, and before you say anything, it was a great price and I wasn't in the best financial situation. I'd never actually used Craigslist before, but I knew it was an average place for people to sell their stuff, which meant that it was usually cheap. Even with the cheap prices of cars on the site, I still had to ask my dad for money because I didn't even have the few $1,000s in my account that I needed in cash for a cheap car. After a bit of scrolling though, I messaged this guy who posted his truck for $4,000 and he got back pretty quickly, answering all of my questions on it and giving what sounded like honest answers. He basically said that it wasn't the nicest looking, but it'll get you where you gotta be in a reliable manner. Interested, he agreed to meet me at a Burger King that was a halfway point of where we both lived. I got there first, taking an Uber, and he showed up maybe 5 minutes later. We chatted for a bit, and he told me more about the truck, mentioning minor issues it's given him in the past, but nothing too serious. After all, I didn't have the money to be picky. Of course, I asked if I could test drive it, to which he said that he knew a less busy parking lot and I could test drive it there. Honestly, I was like, alright, whatever, and I took my phone out to get a quick Uber, but he said it was just across the street and that we could just ride together. I didn't want to be rude and had never done something like this before, so I kind of assumed it was a normal thing. Looking back, I should have told him to F off, but I was young and he was old, so for some reason I trusted him. As I got inside, he asked me if I had my license on me, which was just another reason I trusted him. He seemed like he was a genuine guy. He started driving, though we went a little further than across the street, probably a few blocks away from the Burger King, to this empty parking lot away from the main road, which was the first red flag to come up, even though it should have been the second or third. Alright, let's switch, he said, putting the car in park. As we were passing each other around the car, he threw me the keys, saying heads up, but they landed nowhere near me. I mean, I would have had to dive into the concrete to catch them. Awkwardly, I went to pick them up, and just as I bent down, I felt the weight of his foot slam against my side, and before I knew it, he was on top of me, ripping my wallet out of my back pocket and running back towards the truck. I immediately grabbed the keys from the ground, thinking he must have forgotten them in the heat of the moment, and that I could possibly force a trade. Unfortunately though, the keys he threw at me must have just been fake, because he just drove away, leaving me stranded there stupidly. What makes everything worse is that it all happened so fast I couldn't even get the damn license plate. I still had my phone though, and the first thing I did was cancel the only card I had because I couldn't risk him spending money I didn't have, and then I called the police. I walked back to the Burger King and filed a report when they met me there, but with only the description of a rusty white truck and an average middle-aged white guy, nothing ever came of it. He took the ad down, and his email wasn't even a real name. Apparently it was just named after a video game character, and again, I didn't get his plates. So all in all, I lost $4,000 of straight cash, had to wait for a new card in the mail, had to get a new license, and they didn't even catch the guy. Moral of the story is, don't use Craigslist, and don't be as stupid as I was.